Welcome to the Primo's Musings podcast.
Good morning. Hi, Satish. How are you doing?
Good, Sridhar. How are you?
Good. I know it's been a while since we caught up because the Formula One just started in Australia. We'll get to the Australia one first, but there have been so many changes in the 2025 edition of the Formula One, which is the 76th running of the prestigious motorsport competition. So let's quickly dive into some of the changes that have happened. So I'll give you the floor to start with it, and then I will jump in because we have a lot of driver movements, including the biggest one, which is Hamilton going to Ferrari. And then we'll get to how his performance was yesterday in
Yeah.
the rain-filled Australian Open Grand Prix. But there's also so many other things with new name changes, new rules. So maybe first let's start with what changes in 2025 with pretty much the driver lineups, the teams, and also some of the rules.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of interesting to watch it from 24 perspective. So maybe for a couple of minutes, I'll look back at 24, right? 2024, couple of major changes. Everybody expected Max to do great because 2023 was obviously an awesome season for him. And 2024, he won the Drivers' Championship. To me, the biggest pivot that happened in 2024 is McLaren, right? They went in 2023 from being like fourth in the Constructors' Championship to becoming the first. Think about it. Lando used to be in 2023 like sixth, and Oscar used to be ninth, and
Hmm.
these guys moved up like way up and caught up with Red Bull. So to me, that was like a major pivot that happened. Ferrari also did pretty well. They were the
Hmm.
second actually, and they nipped Red Bull, which for the first time in years fell back to number three last year. And so when I thought about like 2024 and I looked at the races and everything, two things jumped at me. McLaren went about it in a very surgical way. It wasn't just the drivers. Lando and Oscar were obviously are great drivers, but they've been working on their cars for 2 years now. If you go back to 2023, second half of 2023, if you go back to, looking at what is that, the Drive to Survive series, you'll see the progression, and the second half they really started to do some things to their car, and you could see them make podiums and things like that. And 2024 they completely switched, right?
That is very similar to, like, going back to the Drive to Survive, which I just started watching the season number 7, which is pretty interesting how they showed even before the first race started, Hamilton already said that he was going. So the
Right.
whole season was under the cloud of Hamilton moving to Ferrari. But that's very similar to how the Honda engines transformed the Red Bull, how they went from that. But now, and you could see that even in season 1, or season 7, episode 1, about how the whole Hamilton not being too happy with
With the cars.
um, the, yeah, the
Yeah.
cars, and that clearly shows even in the first episode. So how they went through the whole
Yeah.
year is amazing to see, which I have to watch the rest of
Yeah,
it.
I think
So
I think McLaren has done a fantastic job with the car. And look, you shouldn't take anything away from Max. That was his fourth consecutive drivers' championship, right? I mean, he's still behind the seven, which um, Schumacher and Hamilton have, right? Seven championships, but still, it was a great year for Max. And then, of course, Sergio had a bad year. That was kind of a big thing that really pulled back, I think, Red Bull's chances at the constructors' championship. And like you said, last year was also a big year because of Hamilton's announcement. What I was also very interested in about 2024 is entering into 2024. I believe 75% of the drivers didn't have a contract. So already we knew when the season started that it's going to be a year of big changes, which is what ended up happening, right? Anyway,
right.
all of that kind of takes us into 2025, and you look at it, there are, we're obviously starting with the Australian Grand Prix with 24 races this year, 6 rookies. Think about it, right? 20
That
drivers, 6 of them are rookies.
that's either it could go either way, right? It could either be that breakout year for at least one of the rookies that you're going to be talking about going into next year, or how they're going to fare with all the best drivers that you have on that. Satish, let's talk about the rookies, and then we'll come back to the movements that we had in uh, the lineup right now. Let's talk about that after that.
Yeah. So rookies, right? So we've got Liam Lawson. Arguably, he came in mid-season, but he hasn't got like a starter seat. So he's going to be replacing Sergio, Sergio's seat on Red Bull with Max. So Liam Lawson on Red Bull. Kimi Antonelli will be who's like a real superstar, teen superstar. He's like 18 years old, believe it or not, coming out of F2. He's going to be sharing a seat with George Russell on Mercedes after Hamilton left. New guy. Actually, there's a bunch of people here that a couple of them at least that I hadn't even tracked on my radar before. One is a
Mhm.
French racer named Isaac Hadjar. He's coming on the Racing Bulls team along with
Which is a new name, which used to be RB.
RB,
So
yeah,
I know
and
talking
he's sharing a
three
seat with
before that.
Yuki Tsunoda. Um, Haas, Valtteri Bottas was out, so Oliver Bierman has taken his seat on Haas. Then you've got Jack Doohan, who took over a seat along with Pierre Gasly on Alpine. And then on Sauber, actually, I made a mistake. Valtteri was on Sauber. His seat was
And
taken
then
by Gabriel Bortoletti. So, bunch of new guys. I'm told Kimi is the top of the sort of that list in terms of talent. But I've heard a lot of great things about Gabriel, and of course, last year you remember Olivier ran one race and he actually got podium. So these are all good guys. A lot of exciting new lineups to look forward to this year.
Yep, and I think you just mentioned Liam Lawson there, and Liam Lawson now is going to race alongside Max, and then Carlos Sainz has now gone to
That's
Williams.
right.
Maybe that's a boost for Williams, because something that when you watch the Drive to Survive series, Williams was one the pinnacle, and now they're now
At the
kind of now that with McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, now the top three teams. I think they definitely have to find something going on. But to your point about when you had Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in Ferrari, let's see if Hamilton, and we'll talk about his Australian performance, but let's see if he can make that. The car is there. He has the car that he's been asking for
right.
when it compares to his last few years there, 8 years. But it's going to be important to see if Lewis Hamilton can win, uh, a few podiums
Yeah.
with the new car.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll give him. I mean, this year maybe a little pass because he still needs to get used to the car. But maybe next
Yeah.
year. But he's already getting old
Yeah.
anyway. So I do think that we talk about like the person who replaced Hamilton at Mercedes is the 18-year-old Italian guy, Italian rookie Andrea Kimi, I think.
Kimi
Yeah, Kimi,
Antonelli. Yeah.
Kimi. Yeah, Kimi Antonelli. Yeah. So I think he's got a lot of expectations on him right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think honestly, the if you look back even in 2023, Toto Wolff was already talking about Kimi, and he had his eyes set on it. Toto was constantly looking at who might he replace to bring Kimi into the teams. In some ways, when Lewis moved on, it kind of made the decision easy for him. I think Toto was surprised by the decision, but at the end of the day, it's a good thing for them because they're building for a future, and Lewis is just trying to finish out his career in a place where he can win something. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Australian Grand Prix, which I haven't caught up on all the details for, but I did you know look into the results. Just finished earlier
Sure.
today.
Yeah, it started at 12 a.m. our time, but it was not easy to watch that. But I think it was it's a dramatic opener because I think it was. I was actually watching a little bit of the pre-race
Yeah,
thing. There were, there was. You could definitely see there was rain there, and the person who actually um, had the pole position, which is Lando Norris, and McLaren won it. And of course, I mean, they had a lot of rain conditions. Of course, he had to hold off the four-time champion Max Verstappen. So I think Max gets the podium, and then George Russell from Mercedes rounds out the podium in third. So the race started off in wet conditions, as we were talking about, on and off throughout the day. There was a lot of there was a few crashes there. I think the rookie that you mentioned,
yeah,
Isaac, had the start. He delayed the start, and then they had a lot of crashes from Carlos and the other guy, Jack
yeah,
Doohan, was also new.
yeah. I think there was so what's so first of all, like this is the pivot happening in tilt, right? Because you have starting with the first race and Max is not winning. So this is like just look at the contrast between 2023 and now. Lando is the new kid. Lando, by the way, won his first Grand Prix last year in Miami, right? That was his first win.
Right.
And this year he's already
And then,
starting off with a win. Another interesting data point, last year, Australian Open, the Australian Grand Prix, the one in
Grant,
Melbourne, was the third race. And if you remember that race, what happened, you'll actually see it when you catch up in Drive to Survive. Carlos Sainz had appendicitis and he just came off the surgery and won that race. And that was the first
wow.
race after the first two races which Max had won that Carlos won. So a non Red Bull driver in a long time won a race. So it's a kind of interesting pivot that is happening this year, starting with Melbourne, and things are changing. You're seeing pole positions where Max is still in the running. He will be. He's a great
Yeah,
racer.
he was the third, I think, right? He was a third position, but I think he
Yeah,
finished second.
and so
So
he's always going to give a really good fight. The guy doesn't, even bad cars, he makes like, he makes lemonade out of lemons, and so he's really good at that. But but you look at some of the others, man. Look at the changes in positions, right? Yeah, you have people like actually at Australian Open, I think. I mean, Russell was third, right, on the pole at the podium. So that's good. I think George is also a really good. I think he'll have a great year. Piastri was kind of, I think he had a little bit of a problem with the car at some point. He spun off or something, fell down.
yeah, he did. He did. He dropped him to ninth. The other, I think that was a spin-off, and then that cost him a podium. But again, he did s- score some
Yeah,
points,
yeah,
right, for them.
yeah. But
Yeah.
Hamilton, of course, you wanted to say a couple of words on Hamilton, my favorite, but go ahead.
Yeah, so a disappointing race, right? I mean, he finished 10th. Frustrating day for him. Not something that he's used to after being one of the top drivers. I think same thing with Leclerc. Spun out again, finished eighth. So the two Ferrari guys, you're hoping for a great combo, 1-2 combo
Yeah,
punch. But like I said, I'm going to give again. This had a lot of elements there. Weather, a lot of
yes,
combinations, new car, getting used to it. Not that he has not had a chance to drive these cars, but there's a difference between driving in a practice lap and then driving in a real race. So I think again Hamilton will be fine. I think I'll be fine, but I think I'm going to give him. I want to wait until like the fifth or sixth race before I can really talk about the impact of his move to
yeah,
Ferrari.
that's
So
fair.
that's
That's
going to
fair.
be
A lot of people say that when he moved to Mercedes from McLaren before his he moved again, everybody doubted him, and he proved them all wrong because he won a ton of championships. He won, I think, six of his seven in Mercedes. I think he won one with McLaren, if I'm not mistaken. So, but then now he's at a different age, and there are lots more talent around him. So I think the jury is out, but he's got good teams. He's got Fred Vasseur, who's like a great principal. He's got a great teammate in Charles, so they can definitely give a good run for constructors. But I think people like Max and Lando and Oscar are going to be the contenders for the championship this year. At least this was even before Australian Open, the Australian Grand Prix started. I started to feel like those are the three people that are going to be making a run this year. What do you think?
Yeah, and I was reading somewhere too on the Ferrari part of things, which is like they opted to go for some technical change. They went to like a front suspension system. What do you call that? It is morely potentially risky, but high reward. But again, that remains to be seen. I'm willing to give a pass for this particular race for Hamilton. I think they'll bounce back. They'll be among the points. And again, Ferrari finished where they finished last
Yeah,
year in the
right,
constructor championship,
right.
right? So Hamilton has a lot to prove. Pressure is on him, but I'm going to cut him some slack. But they better. I think you said 24 races, right,
Yeah,
this year. So when it goes to like by the sixth or seventh race, if you're not seeing the value or if you're not seeing the performance from Hamilton, a lot of questions are going to be
yeah,
asked. But I do think that he will bounce
yeah.
back.
One,
That's just
well,
my
one
prediction. I'm
race.
going to give him, but they cannot fall too far behind in the constructor championship.
Yeah, one race at a time. So the next one, I believe, is Shanghai. We should. They'll be traveling all the way around around the world, so to speak.
That is
Yeah,
true. That is true. So no, this was good. Like I said, initial we always do this, and then we'll do like a halftime thing. But if there's a race that we feel that was just
yeah.
phenomenal, we should just quickly get on the pod and then try to get through what was amazing about that particular race, about a driver or about the car. We can definitely talk about it, but I do want to see a race in the better conditions. That's when it shows the real, and of course, driving in the rain shows the real talent too. In fact, um, during the break, maybe when I was, I think maybe 2 months ago, I did finish the whole Senna part, the
Did you?
Senna one on Netflix. It was just unbelievable for me. One of the my favorite drivers who died in the car crash. It was amazing just to see the Brazilian, how he went from just a mechanic's son to all the way to the world championship. I If anybody hasn't watched it, I would
Are
recommend
you
you watching
talking,
that. It's
Sridhar,
again
about the documentary or the movie that was made to kind of, I'll say, dramatize the life of?
the
Yeah. By the way, the
dramatization.
documentary that I told you about is also on Netflix now. Take a look at that. That goes his complete life. It's basically has video of Ayrton himself.
After
Yeah,
himself.
and
Okay,
take a
good.
look at
Okay.
that. The thing about the dramatized version that they did on Netflix is I kind of feel a little bit for Alain Prost because they kind of really kind of demonized him. And he was a competitor, kind of like Max is, right? And yeah, you're going to try and cut some corners and do some things, but it's all in the name of competition. So, but yeah, I think it's just yeah, the Senna movies are great. I kind of like what Netflix is doing to try and show the spotlight. I think they might, if they haven't already done one, I believe they're doing one on Schumacher too. So
Yes, and there's also another Brad Pitt movie coming on this one. So I think right after COVID, and I think, and like you said, right, I think in your first podcast on F1, you said you gravitated towards the sport, and I think like many of us, I think I was following the sport. You saw Schumacher doing well, Hamilton was doing well. You followed it kind of in the rear
peripherally,
view
yeah,
mirror, but I do think that the Drive to Survive series brought a lot of the fans back into it. And I think you can see that in the crowds,
oh yeah,
the interest in a lot of
yeah,
people. I mean, I go to work and I can talk F1 to two
yeah,
people, and that's
yeah,
amazing. And
yeah.
and I think these guys actually have been diehard
I know,
fans. And one guy goes to Montreal every
yeah.
time, so I think now I think I can add value to the conversation. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
I think
All right.
so. I get so this is good, Satish. Thanks again for
Hey,
doing
thank
it,
you. It was
and
fun.
I'll publish it and let
All
you know.
right.
All right. Have a good rest
Bye,
of the day,
everyone.
sir. Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Thank you for listening. Primo will be back soon.